Jake Morrison looked out the big window of his spaceship at the huge space station floating in front of them. The station was shaped like a giant ring and spun slowly in the darkness of space. Stars twinkled all around it like tiny diamonds. This was Kepler Prime, the most important place in the galaxy. Today, after 3 long years of waiting, humanity would finally learn if they could join the Galactic Conclave. Jake was an admiral in the Earth Space Fleet. He had gray hair and tired eyes from years of space travel. His ship, the ESS Defiance, was one of the newest and strongest ships that humans had ever built. But even his powerful ship looked small next to the massive alien station ahead of them. The Galactic Conclave was like a big club for smart alien races. 47 different kinds of aliens belonged to this club. They made rules for trade, settled fights between planets, and decided who could join their group. For humans, getting into this club meant everything. It would mean they were finally accepted as equals in the galaxy. Lisa Carter stood on the bridge next to Jake. She was Earth's top diplomat, the person chosen to speak for all of humanity. Lisa had spent years learning about different alien cultures. She knew how to talk to creatures that breathed different air, ate strange foods, and thought in ways that humans could barely understand. Today, all her hard work would be put to the test. Behind Lisa stood 2 other important people from Earth. Rick Thompson was a commander in the military. He was tall and strong, with short brown hair and serious eyes. Rick had brought detailed reports about Earth's weapons and defenses. He wanted to show the aliens that humans could protect themselves and help protect others too. Dr. Amy Foster was the 3rd member of their team. She was a scientist who studied alien technology. Amy had red hair and wore thick glasses. She carried data about all the amazing things humans had invented. Faster-than-light travel, powerful computers, and energy weapons that could defend entire planets. She believed these inventions proved that humans deserved to join the Conclave. Their small transport ship took them from the Defiance to the station. As they flew closer, Jake could see just how enormous Kepler Prime really was. The station was bigger than most moons. Millions of aliens lived and worked inside it. Ships from dozens of different worlds came and went like busy insects around a hive. The docking bay was filled with strange vessels. Some ships looked like giant crystals that sparkled with their own light. Others were dark and blocky, built for strength rather than beauty. A few ships seemed to be made of living metal that moved and shifted like it was alive. Each design came from a different alien mind, a different way of thinking about how to travel through space. Inside the station, the halls were wide and tall. The air smelled different. Not bad, just alien. It had hints of ozone and something sweet that humans couldn't quite identify. The walls glowed with soft light that changed colors as they walked. Alien writing covered every surface, symbols and shapes that looked more like art than language. The Conclave meeting chamber was the most amazing room any human had ever seen. It was shaped like a giant bowl, with seats rising up in circles toward the ceiling. Each section was designed for a different type of alien. Some areas had thick, heavy chairs for big creatures. Other sections had floating platforms for aliens that didn't need to sit down. Special environments were created for aliens that needed different air or temperature. Jake counted the different types of aliens as they entered. The Zephyrians looked like walking crystals. Light passed through their bodies and came out in rainbow colors. They spoke by making musical sounds that echoed through the chamber. The Corathans were huge, each one as big as 3 humans. They had thick, armor-like skin and tiny eyes that glowed red in the dark. The strangest aliens were the Ethereals. They floated in clear suits filled with glowing gas. No one knew what they really looked like under those suits. The Ethereals were telepaths. They could read thoughts and speak directly into other minds. This made them perfect for settling arguments between different alien races. Lisa walked to the center of the chamber where a small platform waited for her. This was where she would speak for all of humanity. Her heart was beating fast, but she kept her face calm and confident. She had practiced this speech 100 times. Every word had been chosen carefully to show the humans were ready to join the galactic community. The chamber grew quiet as High Arbiter Veltar of the Ethereals began to speak. The alien's voice came from everywhere at once, speaking directly into everyone's mind. The words felt cold and formal, like reading from a boring legal document. The Galactic Conclave has reviewed the application of the species known as humans from the planet Earth. We have studied their history, their technology, and their behavior. We have considered their request for membership in our alliance. Lisa felt her stomach tighten. The way the ethereal spoke made her nervous. This didn't sound like the beginning of good news. After careful consideration and extensive debate, the Conclave has reached its decision. The human application for membership has been rejected. The words hit Lisa like a physical blow. She had prepared for this possibility, but hearing it still felt terrible. 3 years of work, millions of dollars spent, and the hopes of billions of humans had just been crushed. The reasons for this decision are as follows, the ethereal continued. Humans are considered too aggressive for membership. In a peaceful alliance, your species has a history of violence and war. Your technology advances too quickly without proper consideration for consequences. You are too young as a spacefaring civilization to understand the responsibilities that come with galactic citizenship. The vote was announced. 43 aliens voted against humans. Only 4 voted in favor. The Altarians, Centauri Republic, New Venusian Collective, and Free Traders Guild had supported Earth. But their voices were not enough. As the meeting ended, aliens began filing out of the chamber. Some looked at the human delegation with what might have been sympathy. Others seemed relieved that the dangerous humans had been kept out of their club. Lisa stood frozen at the platform for a moment, trying to process what had just happened. All their preparation, all their hopes, had been for nothing. Earth was still alone in the galaxy, still seen as too primitive and dangerous to join the civilized worlds. Jake put his hand on Lisa's shoulder. "We'll figure this out," he said quietly. "This isn't over." But as they walked back to their ship, Lisa wondered if Jake was right. Maybe this was over. Maybe humans would never be accepted by the galaxy. Maybe they were destined to remain outsiders forever. None of them knew that this rejection would lead to discoveries that would change everything. The real reason for their rejection was far more complex and frightening than simple concerns about human aggression. The truth would soon reveal that the Galactic Conclave was not what it seemed to be, and humanity's exclusion was just the beginning of a much larger story. The journey back to Earth felt longer than usual. Jake Morrison sat in his captain's chair, staring at the stars that streaked past as they traveled through hyperspace. The rejection still hurt, but something about it bothered him. The aliens had seemed almost afraid when they voted against humanity. That was strange for species that claimed to be so advanced and peaceful. When they reached Earth, President Helen Davis called an emergency meeting. The president was a tough woman in her 50s, with silver hair and sharp eyes. She had led Earth through difficult times before, but this felt different. The rejection wasn't just about hurt feelings. It was about Earth's future in the galaxy. Meeting took place in the secure underground chambers beneath the Capitol. Leaders from every major nation on Earth gathered around a large table. The room was filled with tension and disappointment. Some people looked angry, others just looked tired. Paul Mitchell entered the room, carrying a thick folder of documents. He was the head of Earth's intelligence service, a quiet man who knew secrets that could change the world. Today, he had brought. The biggest secret of all. Before we discuss our response to the rejection, Paul said, there's something you all need to know. We've been running intelligence operations inside alien governments for the past 2 years. What we've discovered changes everything. He opened his folder and spread photographs across the table. The images showed alien documents, secret communications, and meeting records. Most were translated into English, but the originals showed the strange symbols and writing of different alien languages. The Galactic Conclave didn't reject us because we're too aggressive, Paul continued. They rejected us because they're afraid of us, but not in the way we thought. Steve Rogers, one of Paul's top agents, stepped forward. He was young for an intelligence officer, but he had spent months living undercover on alien worlds. His reports had been some of the most valuable intelligence Earth had ever gathered. We intercepted communications between the major conclave powers, Steve explained. The Zephyrians, Corothans, and Ethereals have been discussing the human problem for over a year. They're not worried about us being violent. They're worried about us being too successful. The room fell silent. This was not what anyone had expected to hear. Dr. Amy Foster, who had returned to Earth with the diplomatic team, pulled out her own set of documents. These were technical analyses of alien technology that human scientists had been studying. We've been analyzing captured alien equipment from border skirmishes, Amy said. What we found is shocking. Most of the conclave species reached their peak technology hundreds or thousands of years ago. They've stopped innovating. They've stopped growing, but we haven't. She showed them charts and graphs that painted a clear picture. Human technology was advancing at a rate that the aliens found terrifying. In just 200 years since leaving Earth, humans had developed faster than light travel, artificial intelligence, and energy weapons that matched civilizations 10 times older. The Corothans have been using the same basic ship designs for over 1,000 years, Amy continued. The Zephyrians haven't made a major scientific breakthrough in 5 centuries. They've all reached a plateau, and they're staying there. Paul took over the briefing again. Our agents discovered something else. The Conclave has been actively suppressing younger species for generations. They don't want competition. They want to maintain their position as the galaxy's dominant powers. He showed them more documents. Secret agreements between the major alien races. Plans to limit the technological development of newer species. Evidence of sabotage and manipulation designed to keep potential rivals weak. The Altarians were prevented from developing advanced weapons, Paul explained. The Centauri Republic was blocked from accessing certain scientific databases. Dozens of younger species have been kept dependent on the older powers for advanced technology. Captain Ryan Bell, who commanded one of Earth's merchant vessels, had been listening quietly. He had spent years trading with different alien species, and he knew the galaxy's economy better than most humans. That explains a lot, Ryan said. I've always wondered why some species seem to have technology that didn't match their supposed advancement level. The trading patterns never made sense. Either too much control from the top, not enough free market competition. The president leaned forward. What you're telling me is that the Galactic Conclave is essentially a protection racket. The older species keep the younger ones down to maintain their own power. Exactly, Paul confirmed. And humanity represents the biggest threat they've ever faced. We're advancing too fast, we're too independent, and we're too hard to control. Steve Rogers added another disturbing piece of information. The psychological studies they conducted on human prisoners of war showed something that scared them even more. Humans are resistant to telepathic manipulation. The Ethereals, who have been using their mental abilities to influence galactic politics for centuries, found that they couldn't easily control human minds. Dr. Foster nodded. Our brains are wired differently. We're more unpredictable, more adaptable. In combat situations, humans consistently outperform alien predictions. They can't figure out how we think, so they can't predict what we'll do. The implications were staggering. The rejection wasn't about protecting the galaxy from human aggression. It was about protecting the established alien powers from human competition. There's more, Paul said. We've identified at least 20 species that are unhappy with Conclave rule. Many of them have been secretly working against the system for years. They've been waiting for someone with the power to challenge the established order. He showed them a map of the galaxy with highlighted star systems. These are potential allies, species that voted against us publicly, but have been sending us private messages of support. Others that are tired of being controlled by the Conclave's inner circle. The president studied the map carefully. How many of these species would be willing to openly oppose the Conclave? That depends on what we're willing to offer them, Paul replied. The 4 species that voted for our admission are already reaching out through back channels. They want to discuss alternatives to Conclave membership. Commander Rick Thompson, who had been quiet during most of the briefing, finally spoke up. What about military strength? If we're going to oppose the Conclave, we need to know what we're up against. Steve Rogers smiled grimly. That's the interesting part. The Conclave's military is impressive in size, but it's built on old assumptions. They've been fighting the same kinds of wars for centuries. They're not prepared for human tactics or human technology. Amy Foster added, our analysis suggests that in a direct military confrontation, human forces would have significant advantages. We're more flexible, more innovative, and our equipment is advancing faster than theirs. The room was quiet for a long moment as everyone absorbed this information. Earth had been rejected by the galactic community, but the rejection was based on fear rather than legitimate concerns. The aliens weren't trying to keep humans out to protect others. They were trying to keep humans out to protect themselves. President Davis stood up slowly. Gentlemen, ladies, it seems we have a choice to make. We can accept this rejection and remain isolated, or we can challenge a system that has been suppressing younger species for generations. She looked around the room at the faces of Earth's leaders. The question is, are we going to let them keep us down, or are we going to fight for our right to take our place in the galaxy? The answer, written on every face in the room, was clear. The fight was about to begin. 3 months after the rejection, Captain Ryan Bell guided his merchant ship through the asteroid fields of the Vega system. The S-Horizon was officially carrying mining equipment to the outer colonies, but its real cargo was much more valuable. Hidden in secret compartments were advanced human computer systems, medical supplies, and weapons that could change the balance of power in this part of the galaxy. Ryan was meeting with Zara Nineclicks, the leader of the Altarian resistance movement. The Altarians had been the most vocal supporters of human membership in the Conclave. When the vote failed, they had started asking difficult questions about why the older species were so afraid of humans. The meeting took place on a small asteroid base that the Altarians used for secret operations. Zara looked like a tall, thin human, but her skin was silver, and her eyes were completely black. She spoke in a musical voice that reminded Ryan of wind chimes. Your people have given us hope, Zara said as they walked through the asteroid base. For too long, we have accepted that the old ways were the only ways. But your technology shows us that advancement is still possible. Ryan nodded. We're not trying to start a war. We just want the freedom to grow and develop like any other species. The Conclave fears growth, Zara replied. They have built their power on keeping others small. But working with you, we have learned that we can be more than they want us to be. She showed Ryan a laboratory where Altarian scientists were working with human designs. They had taken human computer technology and adapted it for their crystalline biology. The results were impressive. computers that could process information faster than anything the Conclave had ever seen. We are not the only ones who feel this way, Zara continued. The Centauri Republic, the new Venusian Collective, even some. Members of the Free Traders Guild are asking questions. Your rejection has made many species realize that the Conclave is not what it claims to be. Meanwhile, halfway across the galaxy, Commander Sarah Walsh was having her own secret meeting. The Centauri Republic was facing a crisis. Their outer colonies were demanding independence, and their military was stretched thin, trying to maintain order. The Conclave's older members were offering help, but their price was too high. Complete control over Centauri trade routes. The meeting took place on a Centauri battleship that had been damaged during a patrol. Sarah's ship, the ESS Guardian, had officially responded to their distress call. In reality, the two ships had arranged this meeting to discuss mutual defense agreements. Captain Marcus Vale of the Centauri Republic looked tired. His people had been fighting border wars for months, and they were losing. The Centauri were skilled warriors, but their equipment was old and their tactics were predictable. "We need your help," Marcus said bluntly. "The Corathans are backing the rebels in our outer systems. They want to break up our republic and take control of the pieces." Sarah showed him tactical displays of recent battles. Human defensive systems could protect your shipping lanes. Our early warning networks could give you hours of advance notice before attacks, but we need something in return. "What do you want?" Marcus asked. "Access to your trade networks, safe passage through your space, and most importantly, support when we make our move against the Conclave." Marcus considered this carefully. The Conclave has rules against unauthorized military cooperation. "The Conclave has rules against a lot of things," Sarah replied, "but they break their own rules when it suits them. Why should we be the only ones who follow them?" The agreement was reached quickly. Within days, Centauri convoys were being protected by human escort ships. The technology transfer was immediate and dramatic. Human sensor arrays could detect enemy ships long before Centauri systems even knew they were there. On the other side of the galaxy, Director Kim Lewis of the new Venusian Collective was making her own deals with humanity. The Collective was small compared to the major Conclave powers, but they controlled some of the richest mining systems in known space. The problem was that the Conclave's established powers dictated the terms for their mineral exports. Kim met with Captain Tony Adams of the ESS Liberty in a mining station deep in the Vega Nebula. The station was officially abandoned, but it had been secretly converted into a meeting point for species that wanted to avoid Conclave surveillance. "We mine the crystals that power their ships," Kim explained. "We extract the rare metals that make their technology possible, but we get almost nothing in return. The Conclave sets the prices, controls the shipping, and keeps us dependent on them for everything else." Tony nodded. "We've seen the same pattern everywhere. The older species control the resources and the trade routes. Everyone else just works for them." "Your people offer something different," Kim said. "Fair trade, advanced technology, and respect. For our independence, we want to be part of that." The deal they worked out was simple but revolutionary. Human mining technology would increase the Collective's extraction rates by 300%. In return, the Collective would provide rare materials that Earth needed for its expanding fleet. More importantly, they would serve as a source of funding for the growing resistance movement. The biggest surprise came from the Free Traders Guild. Tony Adams had expected them to be difficult to work with. The guild was made up of independent merchants, smugglers, and entrepreneurs who operated on the edges of legal space. They had no loyalty to any government and cared only about profit. But when Tony met with guild representatives at a hidden base in the neutral zone, he discovered something unexpected. The Guild hated the Conclave's control over trade routes even more than the official government species did. The Conclave strangles free trade, explained Captain Maria Santos, one of the Guild's senior members. They control who can trade what, where, and when. They tax everything, regulate everything, and crush anyone who tries to compete with their approved merchants. Maria showed Tony maps of the galaxy's trade routes. 30% of all galactic commerce happens outside official channels. The Conclave pretends it doesn't exist, but they know it's there. They just can't control it. The Guild's network was vast and sophisticated. They had connections on thousands of worlds, secret bases in every major system, and intelligence networks that rivaled government agencies. They had been waiting for someone with the power to challenge the Conclave's economic control. "We can move your people and your goods anywhere in the galaxy," Maria offered. "We can provide intelligence, safe houses, and communication networks. We can even provide financing for operations that hurt the Conclave's interests. What do you want in return?" Tony asked. "Access to your technology, protection from Conclave retaliation, and a guarantee that when you win, you'll support free trade instead of the controlled economy we have now." As the months passed, the underground network grew stronger. Human technology was spreading through the galaxy, but not through official channels. Species that had been suppressed for centuries were suddenly discovering that they could build better ships, develop more efficient weapons, and create communication systems that the Conclave couldn't intercept. The network was coordinated by a group of human agents led by Colonel Jason Parker. He operated from a mobile command center that moved constantly between different systems. His job was to keep all the different resistance groups working together while avoiding detection by Conclave intelligence services. "We're not just building alliances," Jason reported to Earth during one of his coded transmissions. "We're building a new kind of galactic society, one where species can grow and develop without permission from the established powers." Agent Nicole Brown, working undercover in the Centauri Republic, sent back reports that showed how quickly things were changing. The Conclave's member species are starting to ask questions. They're seeing what's possible when you're not held back by artificial limitations. Some of them are reaching out to us through back channels. The most important development came from Major Dan Collins, who had infiltrated the Corathan military. His reports revealed that even the Conclave's strongest military power was having problems. Their equipment was old, their tactics were outdated, and their soldiers were demoralized by fighting wars they didn't understand. "They're not invincible," Dan reported. "They're just big and intimidating. But intimidation only works if people are afraid. The species we're working with are learning not to be afraid." The underground network was ready for the next phase of the plan. They had allies, resources, and most importantly, they had shown that the Conclave's control was not absolute. The time for hiding was almost over. Soon, it would be time for the galaxy to see what humanity and its allies could accomplish when they worked together. Lieutenant Colonel Jason Parker crouched in the shadows of an abandoned warehouse on the planet Kepler-7. 6 months of careful planning had led to this moment. His team of human infiltrators had spent weeks gathering information from inside the Conclave's most secure facilities. Tonight, they would steal the documents that would change everything. The warehouse was located in the industrial district of the planet's capital city. During the day, it was busy with alien workers loading and unloading cargo ships. But at night, it became quiet and empty. Perfect for a secret meeting between species that were supposed to be enemies. Jason's team included some of Earth's best intelligence agents. Agent Nicole Brown had been living undercover in the Centauri Republic for months. She had learned to speak their language perfectly and could pass for one of them in dim lighting. Major Dan Collins had spent even longer infiltrating the Corathan military. His size and strength allowed him to blend in with the massive alien. Warriors, the documents they had gathered, painted a terrifying picture of the Galactic Conclave's true nature. What they had discovered went far beyond simple economic control or political manipulation. The Conclave was actively destroying younger civilizations to maintain their own power. "Look at this," Nicole whispered, spreading alien documents across. A makeshift table. The papers were covered in the flowing script of the ethereal language, but human computers had translated them into English. These are records of the Conclave's Development Limitation Program, going back 300 years. The documents showed systematic suppression of technological advancement across the galaxy. The Conclave hadn't just been controlling trade, routes, and political decisions. They had been actively sabotaging the scientific and technological development of younger species. Dan pointed to a section of the report. The Vegan Confederation was developing advanced medical technology 20 years ago. They had discovered treatments for diseases that plagued dozens of species. The Conclave introduced a computer virus that destroyed their research databases and killed thousands of their scientists. Jason felt sick reading the details. They've been doing this for centuries. Every time a younger species gets close to matching their technology, the Conclave finds a way to knock them back down. The evidence was overwhelming. The Conclave had started wars between promising civilizations, causing them to waste resources on conflict instead of development. They had introduced diseases to planets that were becoming too advanced. They had even arranged for accidents to happen to the most brilliant scientists and engineers among younger species. The Altarians were developing quantum computers 50 years ago, Nicole continued. Their research was stolen, and then their lead scientist died in a suspicious transport accident. The Centauri Republic had developed new energy weapons that could have changed the balance of power in their sector. A terrorist attack destroyed their research facility. But the most shocking discovery was what the documents revealed about the Conclave's member species themselves. Jason had always wondered why civilizations thousands of years old seemed to have stopped advancing. Now he knew the terrible truth. They're not just suppressing other species, Dan said quietly. They're suppressing themselves. The documents showed that the Conclave's founding members had reached a point where they were afraid of their own potential. They had stopped innovating, stopped exploring, stopped growing. They had chosen stagnation over the risks that came with advancement. The Zephyrians haven't made a major scientific breakthrough in over 500 years. Nicole read from one report. Not because they can't, but because they've decided not to. They're afraid that new discoveries might upset the balance of power within their own society. The Corathans had actually banned certain types of research within their own territory. Their military had the resources to develop incredibly powerful weapons, but they had chosen not to. They preferred to maintain their current level of technology rather than risk creating something that might change their society. Even the ethereals, with their advanced telepathic abilities, had stopped trying to expand their mental powers. They had reached a comfortable level of ability and decided to stay there rather than risk the unknown consequences of becoming more powerful. It's not just about controlling other species, Jason realized. It's about controlling change itself. They're terrified of advancement because advancement means uncertainty. They want everything to stay exactly the same forever. The documents revealed that the Conclave had been studying humanity for much longer than anyone had realized. They had been watching human development for over 50 years, long before humans had even developed faster-than-light travel. What they had seen had terrified them. They've been monitoring our technological development since we first launched. Satellites into space, Dan said, reading from a classified ethereal report. They watched us go from basic computers to artificial intelligence in just decades. They saw us develop nuclear weapons and then space travel in less than a century. Aliens had run computer simulations of human development. Every model showed the same result. If humans were allowed to continue advancing at their current rate, they would surpass every conclave species within a few generations. Not just in technology, but in exploration, expansion, and influence. They're not afraid of us being violent, Nicole said. They're afraid of us being successful. The documents showed that the conclave had debated different ways to deal with the human problem. Some had suggested destroying Earth entirely before humans could become a threat. Others had proposed infiltrating human society and guiding their development along safer paths. But the solution they had chosen was more subtle. They would reject humanity's application to join the conclave, then gradually isolate Earth from the rest of the galaxy. They would encourage other species to avoid contact with humans, slowly strangling human expansion until they gave up and retreated back to their own solar system. They've done this before, Jason said, looking at historical records. The Andromedans were expanding rapidly 200 years ago. The conclave isolated them, cut off their trade routes, and encouraged neighboring species to see them as dangerous. Within 50 years, the Andromedans had withdrawn to their home system and stopped trying to expand. The pattern was clear. The conclave didn't destroy promising civilizations directly. They just made it impossible for them to grow, forcing them to stagnate or retreat. It was a slow, patient form of genocide that left no obvious evidence. But the documents also revealed something else. The conclave's control was not as strong as it appeared. There were cracks in their system, species that were growing tired of the artificial limitations placed on them. 23 species have secret research programs that violate conclave restrictions, Nicole reported. They're developing banned technologies in hidden facilities. Some of them are more advanced than the conclave realizes. Major Dan Collins had discovered something even more important. The conclave's military is not what it seems. Most of their member species don't actually support their aggressive policies. They go along with them because they're afraid of being targeted themselves. Agent Lisa Martinez, who had been operating deep inside ethereal territory, had sent back the most shocking intelligence of all. The ethereals are dying out. Their birth rate has dropped to almost nothing. They're using their telepathic abilities to hide the fact that their civilization is collapsing. The same pattern was repeated across the galaxy. The conclave's member species were old, tired, and slowly dying. They weren't suppressing younger civilizations out of strength, but out of fear and desperation. They knew that their time was ending, and they were terrified of being replaced. This changes everything, Jason said. We're not fighting a powerful enemy. We're fighting a group of scared, dying civilizations that are desperately trying to hold on to power they no longer deserve. The underground network had been building strength for months, but now they had something even more valuable than allies or technology. They had the truth. The conclave was not an alliance of advanced civilizations working for galactic peace. It was a conspiracy of failing species trying to prevent anyone else from succeeding. Jason activated his secure communication system and sent a coded message to Earth. We have what we need. The galaxy is ready to learn the truth about the conclave. It's time to make our move. The revelation was complete. Now it was time for the galaxy to see what humanity and its allies could accomplish when they were no longer held back by artificial limitations. The old order was about to end, and a new age was about to begin. President Helen Davis stood at the podium in the Great Assembly Hall on Earth. Behind her, flags from dozens of worlds hung in a colorful display of unity. Representatives from 23 different species filled the seats, their various forms, creating a tapestry of life that the galaxy had never seen before. Today would mark the end of the old order and the beginning of something entirely new. The assembly hall had been built specifically for this moment. For months, construction crews had worked around the clock to create a space where dozens of different species could gather comfortably. Special atmosphere controls allowed aliens with different breathing requirements to attend the same meeting. Translation systems provided real-time communication between species that had never been able to talk directly to each other before. Admiral Jake Morrison watched from the command center of the orbital defense platform above Earth. His fleet of 300 ships was ready for whatever response the Conclave might attempt. But Jake knew that the real battle would not be fought with weapons. It would be fought with words and ideas that could change the galaxy forever. President looked out at the assembled representatives and felt the weight of history on her shoulders. Every word she spoke would be transmitted across the galaxy. Simultaneously, the underground network had spent months preparing communication relays that could not be blocked or intercepted by Conclave technology. Every inhabited world would hear her message at the same time. Friends, allies, and fellow beings of the galaxy, President Davis began. For too long, the stars have been divided between those who rule and those who serve. For too long, the dreams of countless species have been crushed by those who fear change and growth. Today, that ends. On distant worlds, beings who had never heard a human voice before listened as the president's words were translated into their own languages. In hidden research facilities, scientists who had been forced to abandon their work looked up from their concealed experiments. In the halls of power on Conclave worlds, alien leaders felt a chill of fear as they realized what was happening. The Galactic Conclave has told you that they represent peace and stability, the president continued. They have claimed to protect the galaxy from dangerous younger species. But we have uncovered the truth about their real purpose. Lisa Carter, now serving as Earth's Secretary of Galactic Affairs, activated the massive display screens around the assembly hall. Documents, recordings, and evidence gathered by the underground network appeared for all to see. The systematic suppression, the sabotage, the deliberate destruction of promising civilizations, all of it was laid bare for the galaxy to witness. The Conclave has not been protecting the galaxy from us, President Davis said. They have been protecting themselves from competition. They have been preventing advancement, destroying innovation, and condemning entire species to stagnation so that they could maintain their own failing grip on power. The reaction across the galaxy was immediate and explosive. On Altarian worlds, crystalline beings who had accepted limitations for centuries began to glow with renewed energy. In the Centauri Republic, military commanders who had been fighting with outdated equipment suddenly understood why they had been denied better weapons. Across the Free Traders Guild's network, merchants realized that the economic restrictions they had endured were not natural market forces, but deliberate manipulation. Today, we announced the formation of the Galactic Liberation Alliance, the president declared. This alliance is open to any species that believes in the right to grow, to explore, to innovate, and to determine their own destiny. We do not seek to replace the Conclave's tyranny with our own. We seek to create a galaxy where every species can reach its full potential. The response was overwhelming. Within hours of the announcement, 17 species had officially requested membership in the new alliance. The Altarians declared their independence from Conclave control. The Centauri Republic announced its withdrawal from all Conclave treaties. The new Venusian Collective expelled Conclave administrators from their mining operations. But the most powerful element of the proclamation was not political. Captain Steve Rogers, working with Dr. Amy Foster, revealed humanity's greatest secret. Weapon, a new form of faster-than-light communication that could not be intercepted, blocked, or controlled by existing technology. For months, we have been secretly installing these communication arrays throughout the galaxy, Steve announced. Every world that wishes to join our alliance will have access to instantaneous communication with every other member. No more isolation. No more information control. No more forcing species to depend on conclave networks for basic communication. The implications were staggering. The conclave's power had always depended on controlling the flow of information between worlds. They decided what news reached which planets, what scientific discoveries were shared, and which species were allowed to communicate with each other. The new communication network shattered that control completely. On Corathan worlds, military commanders discovered that their own government had been lying to them about the nature of the conflicts they were fighting. Zephyrian scientists learned that research they thought was impossible had actually been achieved by other species years ago. Ethereal leaders found that their telepathic control over information had been completely bypassed. The Conclave's response was swift and predictable. High Arbiter Veltar announced that humanity and its allies were in violation of galactic law and authorized military action to restore order. Conclave fleets began moving toward Alliance territory, confident that their superior numbers and established positions would quickly crush the rebellion. But as the alien fleets advanced, they discovered that the galaxy had changed while they were not paying attention. The Liberation Alliance controlled key trade routes that had been secretly prepared for months. Strategic mining operations, communication relays, and supply bases were already in Alliance hands. The underground network had not just been gathering allies, they had been positioning themselves for exactly this moment. Admiral Morrison watched the Conclave fleets approach and smiled grimly. "They're still thinking like the old galaxy," he told his staff. "They expect us to fight the way they've always fought. They're about to learn that humans fight differently." A first engagement took place in the neutral zone, where a conclave force of 50 ships encountered 20 human vessels protecting an alliance convoy. The aliens expected a traditional battle with predictable tactics and overwhelming firepower. Instead, they faced coordinated attacks from multiple directions, innovative weapon combinations, and tactical maneuvers they had never seen before. Human ships moved like dancers, coordinating their attacks with a precision that the aliens found impossible to counter. When the Conclave ships tried to use their superior numbers, they found that human electronic warfare systems had already taken control of their communications and targeting systems. Within hours, the engagement was over. Half the Conclave fleet had been destroyed or captured, while the human forces had suffered only minor damage. More importantly, the battle had been broadcast live across the Alliance communication network. Every world in the galaxy could see that the Conclave's military superiority was an illusion. The psychological impact was even greater than the military victory. For centuries, younger species had been told that the Conclave's power was absolute, and their technology was unbeatable. The battle in the neutral zone proved that this was a lie. The older species were not invincible gods. They were just aliens, with old ships and outdated tactics. Over the following weeks, the war spread across the galaxy. But it was unlike any conflict the Conclave had ever fought. Instead of massive fleet battles, they faced guerrilla attacks from species they had never considered dangerous. Instead of fighting for territory, they were fighting to maintain the illusion that they were still in control. Planet after planet declared independence from Conclave rule. Species that had been suppressed for centuries suddenly found their voices and their strength. The Alliance communication network carried news of victory after victory, inspiring even more worlds to join the rebellion. President Davis stood once again at her podium, but this time she was speaking to a galaxy that had fundamentally changed. 6 months ago, humanity was rejected by the Galactic Conclave. We were told that we were too young, too aggressive, too dangerous to join their club. Today, we have proven that we were not the ones who were dangerous. The real danger to the galaxy was a system that prevented growth, crushed innovation, and condemned countless species to live smaller than they deserved. She looked out at the assembly, now filled with representatives from over 40 species. The old order is ending. The age of artificial limitations is over. The galaxy belongs to all of us, and together we will build something greater than any of us could achieve alone." As she spoke, construction crews were already beginning work on new space stations, new trade routes, and new research facilities. The galaxy was finally free to grow, to explore, and to become everything it was meant to be. Humanity had been excluded from one alliance, but in response, they had created something far greater. The future belonged to those brave enough to reach for it.